All right. Well, hello everyone. We are back for another episode of the Dot Wave podcast.
Hello,
And
hello.
hello. Welcome. And today we are going to be talking about how to manage large projects and just kind of all the little details that go into that. And I think we're just going to do this chronologically. So we'll think of like, okay, what happens at the start of the project versus the middle versus the end, and we'll just go step by step, or somewhat, to just we're not gonna go through every little detail, but we're gonna hit the big points, right?
Yes.
Um, First off, I guess it just starts with communicating with an artist, and I think anybody who's been in a service industry knows that in order to get these business interactions down, take for example, like I was a waiter for a long time, so I had a script
Mm-hmm.
that I basically followed, and that script would it was guaranteed to help me sell more of something, whether it be a drink or an entree. It's something that you put
Totally.
together over time that you just notice, like, hey, when I word things this way, it worked, or hey, when I did this, that kind of turned them off of this, and
Yeah.
you pick up on these cues over time. So, um, Andrew, how do you go about reaching out to bands? Do you essentially cold call bands, or do you let them come to you? And if they come to you, how does that conversation flow?
I've based what I do on just building like long-term relationships,
Mm,
and
yeah.
long-term can be, I mean, sometimes I have people that I've been talking with for like a few years now, and these relationships usually carry after the project too. Um, but I'll meet somebody, they'll add me on Facebook, very rarely Instagram, and I'll just talk. They'll share me links with of their band. I'll share them links of old music that I've done. And I'll kind of maybe not like coerce the conversation immediately into, hey, let me provide you with a service for X amount of dollars, because I feel like that's a huge turnoff.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
I wouldn't want someone really cold calling me like that, or just like, I add them and they just send me like 10 links to their band
Yeah.
in some weird way that is a turnoff, whether the music is fucking cool or not.
No, it's a huge
Uh,
turnoff because it's impersonal.
yeah,
It feels like a
yeah.
robot sending that to you.
And you think of like good salesmen in like car dealerships, they're extremely friendly, and they're,
Yes.
we're here for you. And I get the idea of that, although that is really pushy. I try and just put that same energy into like a few weeks or maybe sometimes a few months. And then I find ways in which I could like explain how maybe I could help them or like solve their problem.
Mm.
Ideally, that's how it would go. And a couple of times a long time ago, I would get a mix and kind of do a demo mix of what they have.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
stopped doing demo mixes after a little while, uh, and would just, like I was saying, kind of like find ways that I could help make their production sound better, and then share my portfolio with them to see if that's something that they like, or there's work
Yeah.
in there that they like that I've done. And then there's kind of just keeping up the conversation while they talk with people about, when do they want to do it. Throughout that, I'll get bits and pieces of information on, is it going to be live drums or MIDI drums? Are you guys using like cabs? Are you coming to me to record? And kind of get the details going. And also, a big thing that I've noticed is like immediately using like we and us statements. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's coincidence, but that has helped me. I feel like in
Smart.
a way that we're already in this together. Like we want to make the music, the end result, the best as possible together.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree.
and if we come to a deal, I probably should be a little more adamant about this, but send them like a version of the contract that I have, especially if they're coming in. But lay down some like general ground rules on how, like, until payment's complete, I'm not going to send out any full tracks. Or if you can, please send DIs, or these are the hours that I'm going to be working, and just set up some kind of terms, and collect any deadlines, and then receive the project and take off.
Yeah.
Try and get it done speedy.
I mean, you've
Stay
hit
up to date with them as well.
you're hitting a lot of the points. So let's kind of unpack that a little bit. Let's go back and
Yes,
let's talk about that a little bit. Um,
totally.
so I think you're 100% right that you need to just create personal relationships with these people. So a lot of times, people will message me, and a thing that I've noticed is a lot of times they'll just send me something they're working on, and they'll just be like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And if I was just trying to be a straight up businessman, I'd either ignore that or whatever. But I
Yeah,
find that something pretty useful is just to listen and give genuine advice. You know,
totally.
which people it's hard to get genuine advice, right? You're surrounded usually by your friends or by yes men, and they'll tell you that everything you do is great.
Yeah.
But if somebody listens to your music and they go, I like the idea, I feel like it needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. Um, this riff is it's like a compliment sandwich, right? Like you're peppering in the stuff you don't like with the stuff that you do like. And you're saying like
Yes.
this riff goes on a bit too long, or the guitar tone here, like I feel like it's a little thin, or like just things like that. Um, People are usually incredibly thankful for it. At least people who are serious musicians are incredibly thankful
Yeah.
for it. If you are if you can't take criticism, you won't go anywhere in this industry. But if you
No.
can accept that stuff and improve on that, then awesome. And sometimes it doesn't turn into work after that, and that's just that. But occasionally, they'll just start to trust you, and you'll develop a friendship, and then it might even take a year or two, but eventually they'll come back to you and be like, "Hey, we're just thinking about going to you." You know, oftentimes it's
Totally.
people who are doing projects on their own, and they put in a bunch of effort, and they send me a mix, and I give them some notes of what could be done better. I give them some quick advice, nothing too complex, but like just an idea of like what I think they're doing wrong, right?
Yeah.
And it usually makes their demo mix better. And sometimes I'll use one of my own mixes as a reference, like listen to the high end on this versus the high end on that if it hasn't been glued properly, right? So things like that. And fairly often they'll end up coming to me again and just being like, no, it's just such a headache to mix. We were just thinking about having you do it. And
Yeah.
that happens fairly often. That's a
It
really cool,
does.
genuine way. So the great part about that interaction is you've made a friend and they trust you, and no part of that just comes off as a cold transaction. Like they
No.
actually want to come to you at that point. Um, that's not just you pitching stuff to them. So that's how I tend to like to do it now. Or either that or just word of mouth, right?
Yeah.
That's
Word of mouth is amazing.
always the best way. So that's how I tend to make friends nowadays, because I do think your clients should be your friends.
That's probably one of my favorite aspects of it is
Yes.
I've been like voice messaging people a lot, and I'll for some reason I feel like I have to get consent to voice message because we're not always in places to do that, but that's like a great way for me to like get to hear this person's voice, and it's the closest thing we can get other than FaceTime to communicating.
Yeah.
And you find those friends through those, whether it's text or whatever, you find those friends through these interactions. And even if they don't come to you, and you still have someone who can support you and digs your music and you dig their music, bounce ideas back and forth. I mean, that's super cool.
Yeah, I like talking on the phone a lot because there's
Yes.
there's so much downtime during the day, like when you're cooking or something, and that's a good time that you could be improving your relationship with a client and not even thinking about it in a business sense. I have a client that
Yeah.
I talk to fairly often, and over time, he's starting to produce his own music, which is really cool, and he's just coming to me for mixing, which I have no problems with. If he asks for advice, I'm happy to give it to him.
Yeah.
Mainly just because recording music is such a pain in the ass compared to
It is.
mixing. Mixing, you get it sent, and I check the files and make sure they're good. I'll give him a pointer if something needs to be retracked, and then it comes to me, and I just get to do the mixing stuff. And that's really rewarding for me is seeing my clients grow and become more independent, because I came from a very DIY kind of place, and so I respect when anybody wants to improve themselves in that way. I don't think of it as they're taking work away from me, because they're really not. Um,
Yeah.
he's also started to produce someone else for the first time, and
Hey,
he's
very
like
nice.
he's telling me like, hey, I'm pushing for you to be the one to mix it. So it will come back. Your good behavior will come back and repay you. There's
It does.
there's enough money to go around. I think if you lift your clients and your friends up, that will come back full circle. It's like karma. It'll come back, and
Yep.
good karma breeds, good karma, if you want to think of it in that way.
It does. It really does.
But okay, so talking about communication, I think something important is establishing a framework of what they actually want in the project, having them paint you a picture of the vibe they're going for. You know, maybe you get a couple keywords from them, right? Like, we're looking for, since we do a lot of metal, we're looking for something violent, heavy. Like, okay, cool. What type of violent and heavy, right? And then you specify it. And then you get into specific examples. So you say, okay, what band is a band that you think does that really well? And they'll send you something and you can use that as a reference. Like, okay, tuck that, away, be like, all right, these drums sound cool. Let's try to chase a vibe sort of like this. Or these guitar tones are cool. I like what they did here. Is this what you're looking for? And they're like, yeah, like, cool. You can use that reference as, again, a framework of, how you'll be making your creative decisions when the project starts. And it also gives you
Totally.
a shared language with your client. Or,
That's a
when
good way to think of that.
I'm stealing that from Mick Gordon. I listened to a URM podcast, so I can't take credit for it. Mick Gordon, who did the Doom soundtrack and many others.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I think he also worked on a Monuments track recently. He did a lot of synth work for them. So
Nice.
the way he described it was, yeah, a shared language. So when they say heavy, now you know what they mean by heavy. So you've established, like, okay, that's what that word means. And it makes it easier to communicate with each other, and there's less confusion overall. So I think getting all of that out of the way right away is important to making sure your vision and the artist's vision are in line with each other.
Absolutely. There are times where I've had to do like countless revisions on stuff because there weren't references. And this was a while ago. If it really comes down to it, I'll just ask bands or something. They say, well, there isn't like a specific one artist that we want to sound like, but here's what we're from. I'll Google that and kind of use my own intuition, and it came out okay. But sometimes on like these early projects where there wasn't much of a reference and I wasn't really using references to begin with in my mixing, it would just be like revision after revision after revision. And like as I've progressed, it's nice to have some kind of goal to aim for.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, a shared language, that's a really cool way to go into asking for reference tracks.
Yeah. You're building a vocabulary together, which
Yes.
is cool. So the next thing, right? So you've got them on the hook. They've accepted the price, all that bullshit. You've gotten a good relationship with them. It's not just work. You're building an emotional connection with these people, hopefully. I do think that's important. Building an emotional connection with your clients.
It's very important.
This is art, right? And I think we've all worked on
Yes.
projects before where we just didn't care about the project all that much.
Yeah.
And you and I both know that if you don't care about the project, you just won't do your best work, even if you're getting paid
Yep.
well. It just won't happen. So you need to make sure you're doing projects that you give a shit about with people that you care for. And, then your name won't be on some shitty project you did with music that you don't care about.
Absolutely. And working with people that I actually consider my friends, it just makes it a lot more pleasant, whether I've met them face to face or not.
Yeah.
You just kind of get like a level of comfort. You can read kind of your friendship and analyze the conversation thus far and maybe start to get a little looser.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and
I
you can
think,
really make it more of just like a fun, creative vibe with these guys that you
Yeah,
care about and want to
because
sound good and succeed.
because you're going to be spending incredibly long hours with these people inside of, a tiny room usually. It is good to have a good
Yep.
relationship with these guys. I just did
Totally.
what was it? I put in almost 24 hours, I think, with Earthworm just in 2 days yesterday.
Wow, already. Oh
Yeah,
my
just
gosh.
in 2 days over the weekend, right? So like, and then before that, I edited drums for 30, 40 hours that week. So I had a very, very long
Wow.
week last week.
Yeah.
And, but the parts where they were there didn't feel that long. Like, sure, we were working our asses off, we were getting tired, but we were able to like just joke with each other and bullshit. And that's the special stuff. That's what makes this worth doing.
It is.
That is the most
Yes.
fun part of the recording process, because recording is not fun. It is laborious. You make one creative decision and then you have to make sure the artist just gets the track done properly. You pick
Yep.
the tone and you make it sound good, and then you've done all the fun creative stuff for that day. It is just mechanical, like start, stop, edit. It can get really, really tedious. So having people that are fun to be
Very.
around is huge. It is absolutely
Yeah.
huge in making the job bearable.
Yes. Like most work, I try and think of when I worked my day job, how I would try. I wouldn't want to say that I was like the life of the party, but I would try and like be happy and like
Yeah.
show other people you can be happy while you're here. You know, we don't really want to be here. Granted, I'd much rather be recording somebody than working at a
Yeah.
butchery, but it's that like repetitious work. You just get into some kind of complacency where you're just frustrated to be there or whatever it is. And that rubs off on people. If someone throughout the recording process is clearly having a shitty time,
Yeah.
communication, there's kind of some like bags you got to roll through or a brick wall,
Mm.
um, where I feel like in my experience, things have just gotten quiet and we're sitting here
Yeah.
and we'll
Ooh.
know when things are fucked up. So we'll just delete and we get a system, which is great. So we can still kind of go efficiently, but that positivity is just gone and it makes it so much more difficult.
It's good sometimes when you hit a brick wall like that, instead of just bashing your head on it, just like skip that part and come back. Because sometimes
Yes.
after, another hour of playing, they're way more warmed up and they'll just nail it, right?
Yep.
It's like when somebody fucks up on something multiple times in a row, it just, the chance of them fucking up just exponentially starts to increase. For some reason, it's just like that. So yeah,
It's
I
true.
I do think, you know, if something's frustrating, just skipping it for a bit is a healthy way to approach that. So it just doesn't ruin the
Yeah.
vibe of the session, because once that vibe is ruined, it's done for the rest of the day.
Yeah. It's hard to come back on. It's just not the same. You might be talking more or, maybe try and crack some jokes or whatever. But it's just not the same.
Yeah, and
You
I
want to
I
go into it real strong.
and I do think, especially because I prefer flat rates for these projects, I think it's important, to take little detours. Like if somebody mentions some fucking funny YouTube video they saw, pull that shit up.
Mm,
You
totally.
because
Yeah.
you're bonding with people then, and it also keeps the mood light. You'll see some hilarious video. Like I showed one to Earthworm where this guy's like hanging out of a bus, like yelling, and the bus is pulling forward, and the guy like cracks his head on like a stop sign, and the
Oh.
noise he makes just like like it's so funny. I think it might have even been staged, but it doesn't matter. It's just hilarious, right? So like you get that,
Yes.
and all of a sudden, maybe that noise that he makes becomes a meme, right? Just with that group of people, and all of a sudden now you
Yeah.
guys have inside jokes with each other, and that friendship
I
is
love
really
that.
really developing, and it's
Yep.
genuine. None of that is manufactured. It's just, sure, it's smart business, but like I'm not doing it because it's smart business. I'm doing it because it's fun,
Yeah.
and it counterbalances the hard work that you really have to be doing for 8 to 12 hours a day sometimes.
Absolutely.
Let's talk
It
about
gets intense.
Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about, because we kind of skipped this just going down our list of topics. Let's talk
Mm.
about scheduling, because we really haven't touched on that yet. With large projects, I think you have to have the ability to be flexible, because if you are only available, here's a little anecdote, right? Little personal story. There was a time where I was only available maybe 2 days a week, and it was always like a random day, like a Thursday and a Sunday, right? Because I was working at a
Yeah.
restaurant. So my schedule was all over the place. And it was impossible to find clients back then. And I think back to why, and it's probably because I was so limited in my time that I could be with them, then just nobody was able to do it. If that's not convenient for your client, they just won't show up. They'll go to somebody else.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think scheduling, you need to make sure your schedule is fairly easy for people to come to you. And I also think set hours is important as well. So each week is the same thing. And so they know, hey, on these days we could try to book. I think that's really important. Whether or not it's all week, for me, I do Wednesday through Sunday. Like for me, that's my week, right? Wednesday through Sunday, 12 to 8 p.m. That's my schedule for this. And
Very nice.
sure, sometimes I'll run a little later with the band if I need to. Worst case scenario, I'll have a band come in on Monday or Tuesday. I prefer not to, because that's my weekend, right?
Yeah.
I keep my weekends open for bands to book, and then I need to actually have a weekend myself so I can relax a little bit.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
yeah,
It is work after all. You can experience that burnout that's
yeah,
coming up. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I my schedule is kind of chaotic, and I need to start taking advantage of my planner a little bit more right now because things are kind of getting a little scattered, and it's good for me to have something physical. I can put stuff in my phone all day long and have my little calendar app at the very top, but I glance right over that most of the time.
Yeah,
But usually, like on recording projects, I've found that Saturdays and Sundays for most bands are just the days,
that is
and
the day because they're all working
yeah,
like retail or something, right? They're all
yeah,
working
and
normal jobs, and they usually have off for the weekend.
yes, I'm willing to smash those weekends too. I definitely want to give them the most amount of time possible.
Yeah,
And I, like you said, being flexible, I will work with what they need because they only have these 2 days and I want the work. Um, and if they are somebody that I have built a connection with, absolutely will go that way for them within reason until a certain hour at night. 2, 3 in the morning is probably the absolute latest for me. But
yeah, yeah.
it does vary. I have a guy coming in from the 16th to the 19th, and he just wants to do 6 hour days whenever it works for me.
That's cool.
So I just kind of set that up ahead of time and push some things off on the personal life and just bring them in
Yeah,
at a time that works. So I don't necessarily have something set in stone for the recording side of it. But when I do start getting mixing, because a lot of the work I do is online, um, I'll try and hold myself to like 4 to 6 hour days to get projects done almost
mm.
that day or get like a good headway in within a certain time frame.
That seems to be about the
Otherwise,
max amount of time I can put in on a mix as well during a day before I'm just hurting it more than helping it. Like
yeah,
four to
yeah,
six
my ears
hours. Yeah.
fatigue after that.
Yeah. I would say even probably less than that if we're being honest. Like 3 hours is like your mix should be pretty much there by that point. If it's not, you're just
Yeah,
your workflow is not really working. It's not to say I
totally.
don't spend, another 3 to 4 hours on another day tweaking it, but it should be pretty much put together and the rest of that is just vanity, right? You're like, I want to
Yep,
make this better. But
totally. And I do take plenty of breaks while I'm mixing too.
mhm,
I'll
same.
accomplish one quote unquote phase and then I'll go out, maybe go for like a little walk around the block or
Smart.
something, and then come back, do it
Yeah.
again. Just because I've experienced that fatigue and I've fucked up enough songs of my own to know that, what I'm hearing and when I'm not doing things accurately or the way that I would want them.
I usually do about an hour to 2 hours of work, probably closer to an hour though, hour and a half, and then I like to take about half an hour off and then just keep
Yep.
doing that. Like do that like 3 or 4 times during the day. So,
Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
approach somewhere around 6 to 8 hours of work when I'm mixing, right? If I'm tracking a band, it is balls to the walls, just
Yes.
crazy, and you're there for 10 to 12 hours sometimes. But I think
Yeah.
those long hours it's useful to be flexible like that, especially when you are at the beginning stage of your career, like you and I, where it's working out, we're doing it full time, but we're still trying to make a name for ourselves. Um,
Hmm.
but I do think it's also smart to keep in mind, speaking of burnout, is, you know, trying to avoid doing sessions that long all the time because it can really get to you. Like this last weekend, I had fun, but like going into it, it was like, whew, here we go. Here's another weekend doing
Yeah.
this. Like it,
Yeah.
it does take a piece of you, and you'll never
It's
get that back.
exhausting.
Yeah, it fucks you up. It's a really, really long
Yeah.
day. The Sunday I went to the church sound gig that I do. So I did that in the morning. So I woke up at like 6. I did the church sound for like 4 hours, and I came home to work on the Earthworm project, and we ended up going from like 1 p.m. until around almost midnight. So like
Wow. We.
I was just awake so long, It was
Yeah. That's brutal.
such a long day, and I was just like,
Kudos there.
oh, dude, you do what you got to do, right? Like we had to get it done, so we
Yeah.
did it. Um,
Absolutely. And there's a line too where I would be willing to sacrifice that. I feel like knowing ahead of time, like you said, what to kind
helps.
of expect can kind of help you prepare for that down the
Yeah,
line of that session. But it gets to you either way. But there is that line of like, you have to get it done, or that I want to work like efficiently. And I just want to get the hard part over with.
yeah,
And that can be taken both ways. Sometimes the artist can't, and I have to deal with that. They can only be here for 4 hours once a week.
hmm,
Other days they can come down and we can be in here for 10 or 12 hours and get the bulk of things done.
mm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. So I I think that's enough for scheduling. I think we've kind of hit all the nails on the head. But I think something else that's important when it comes to large projects is just being organized generally. Saving
Yeah.
things in a proper way so you're not looking for the right session. Um, Saving multiple versions of the session. So anytime you're about to make a change that irreversibly, alters something, whether it's printing a
Mm-hmm.
piece of audio, just save a new version of the session. I like to save a new version every single time the band is here as well. So we can always
That's
revert if
smart.
something goes wrong. I back up the session every time they're gone as well. So
Very
I
nice.
will save a backup on an external at least to make sure I have it in at least two or three places. Um, just to be safe. They're paying me a lot of money, and if these files go away, I'm either out a lot of money and we have to redo it, or they just probably go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I just won't let that happen. You know, you just got to be a little paranoid about it and take care. And it'll save you in the
Better
long
safe
run.
than sorry.
Absolutely, yeah.
You put me onto that one time. It was, I don't know how many months ago we were calling, but you said there's like an online service that you could put your files onto
Yeah,
a hard
Backblaze.
drive.
I still haven't done that
Yeah,
yet. Yeah.
me either, dude.
No, but I have it saved in three places now. Like I always have it saved on three
Good.
different hard drives. So I'm at least somewhat, of the way there, but I do need to start doing that Backblaze thing because I think that's
Yeah.
smart. The ideal way to make sure your files don't get deleted is once it's saved in three different places, two physical and one on the cloud, then it's actually backed up. That's the way that you need to think about it. So
Pretty secure there.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the only way I would lose my data right now is if we had a house fire, which, knock on wood,
Yeah.
it's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
No kidding. I
But
got some for you too.
yeah,
That terrifies me.
yeah, it is terrifying because that's your whole business, right? But at least if your
Yep.
files are backed up, even if you don't use an online service, if you just put the drive somewhere else in another house, like I think you brought yours
Yeah.
to your parents once, right? Um,
Yes.
like that's smart. If you do that, if everything goes tits up, all you have to do is grab the drive and get a new computer, and you can start back up right where you left off. And like, I know that's easier said than done, but it's impossible to
Definitely.
restart that project if everything's gone. It's
Yeah.
it's it's an inconvenience, and it will cost you a couple $1,000s if you have to get a new computer. But you can still work on
I
that
would rather
project.
that. Yeah. I would
Yeah,
rather be able to continue. I mean, that would be devastating. Even it being my business outside of that, it's the thing that I like to enjoy. All that would be
yeah,
gone. But
yeah,
the artist too, the letdown there would
yeah.
be
I don't think I
massive.
could. I don't think I could live with myself knowing that I would just if I had fucked somebody else over like that. In a
No,
business sense.
no
So
way.
it would be, yeah. So just be smart. Back up your shit.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
That's one way to be organized. I think another way is there are a lot of times during a project where clients will say something that's important, like, "Can you do this?" And you're like, "I can't do that now, but that's important to know during the mix stage." Take a note, whether it's a marker in your project for a specific moment or you have another document open and you're taking notes. I think all of that stuff is important. Um,
Definitely.
Super, super important. Like, I was listening when we were tracking bass. I noticed that in like two or three places there was like a pop coming from my drums. So I guess I just did a dirty edit or something like that. So I marked those and I could fix that later. Right? Like
Smart.
little things like that. You don't just let that go.
Yeah.
You give yourself a
No.
reminder. All this shit is important. If you look at that album that I'm doing at the moment, all of it, all along the top of the project is just marker, 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 and it all has important notes for each section of the song. Like fade out starts here. This is what the client wants. Pop
Yeah,
here.
it's
Get rid of
important.
this. Like
It's
all
hard to
important. Yeah.
remember all of those things,
You won't
especially
remember
when
all of
they're
it.
later in the phase.
You will
Yeah.
not remember all of it, and you'll kick yourself if you have to
No.
actually just listen to the whole thing to go search for it. So
Yeah.
it's much better just to find it. You know.
Especially as it's brought up too, because
Hmm.
then you don't have to ask them the same question whether you remember that it was a thing or not.
Yep.
Like, oh, this was supposed to happen at 102. You don't have to keep asking them
Yeah.
over and over and
It's
pestering
your
them like
job
that.
to remember. It's not their job to
Yeah.
remember. It's your job to make it sound good. They are just there
Yes.
because they're there to give their performances, right? Um,
Yep. And they
which,
trust you with that.
yeah, which I think also leads into another interesting thing, which is knowing when it's okay to give suggestions and knowing when you have to back off with your suggestions.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've worked on a lot of projects where they invite your creativity and they really want you to be basically like an extra member of the band, and like a producer is, right? A producer is you're coming to them for their creative input. But
Totally.
some bands don't want that, and even even if we're not looking at that extreme, sometimes they love all your suggestions, but like two of them they just don't like. And no matter
Yeah.
how you try to explain it, they just don't like it. And you try it and they still don't like it. And sometimes you just got to be like, okay, like with
Is what it is.
yeah, with Earthworm, with these guys, since they're really good friends of mine, we've done an album before, and they were already friends of friends, right? So we just have a very great relationship. I love these dudes. Um, I was trying to give a suggestion that I knew would just be so good, right? Like it's just like, and he wanted to do something that was a little bit more awkward, and not even like an intentionally awkward kind of way. I just felt like it was just like, eh. And I explained myself. I showed him the other way, and the drummer was just like, "No, we're just not doing that." And and I, just because they're very good friends, I can get away with being snarky. I'm saying like, I said, "Okay, one, it's your song, so we'll do whatever you say, and two,
Yeah.
you're wrong." And then I was like, okay, let's move on.
That's it. We're out of
Yeah,
here.
yeah, we just kind of laughed. But, I'm very close with those guys. You shouldn't be that snarky with other people. Certainly with
Yeah.
other people, you just go, okay, all right, no worries.
Yeah.
Even if
You
you
just move
truly
on.
know, I mean, fight for it sometimes, explain why. Be like, this section is just going on too long. If this drum beat stays the same, it's just monotonous. Like we're hitting it over and over and
Yes.
over again. And if they really just don't want to change, just be like, okay, but
Totally.
by all means present your case, because you are a creative
Absolutely.
individual and they're probably hiring you to be creative. um
Yeah. And that's kind of the fun part, too. If I see the opportunity,
yeah,
I do like to take it. And that kind of comes back to effective communication, too,
yeah,
and knowing how to explain it. And sometimes when I feel like I can explain it, or maybe I can't boing, boing, boing the whole way through the riff. I'll just say, hey, can I see your guitar? I'm just going to kind of throw this out there over these drums
yes,
and just
yeah,
see what you have to say about it. Or maybe we'll record like left and right, and we'll like pretend that that's the part we're doing. And then you can actually hear it coming back rather than being in that flow state still, kind of with that
yeah.
idea that you have.
I do that pretty often. Like sometimes it's easy to relay my ideas, but other times I'm just like, hey, just give me your guitar for a sec. Like let me show you what I'm
Yes.
hearing in my head, because I'm hearing something and I don't know how to explain it. And
Yeah.
that's
It's
fine.
weird.
If the band is cool, they'll be cool with that. If the band
Yep.
is not as cool and they want things exactly their way, then that's okay. But I just tend not to work with people like that. Not
Yeah.
anymore. Like, what's the point? You're coming to me to
I had a
produce.
band come in, and the guitarist was telling me on the drums that they're kind of monotonous, and
Mm-hmm.
he said just like go ahead and like have fun, add embellishments in the cymbals,
Yeah.
and kind of make it seem like he's not our drummer, sort of like we want your ideas on drums. So I thought, cool,
Uh,
I'll keep the basis because it fits the songs. And I
yeah.
just went ham. Like I just did the things that I would like to hear with how the guitars were and the bass. And then the drummer comes along because I guess they hadn't shown him the songs. And the
Mm.
drummer comes along and says, I don't like anything that you did. I play the drums the way I play the drums, and that's what I want to hear on my album. So I thought, damn it. And I didn't save the MIDI or anything. So I had to go I went and re-downloaded it. I
Ooh,
reorganized because the China came in on like hi-hats, it was disarray.
brutal.
And I had to reorganize everything. And the drums
Saving
weren't bad. Don't get me wrong. They
saving
were cool.
multiple versions. That's getting back to that. Anytime you're doing a
Yep.
big decision like that, save an old version. Just always.
Totally.
Because that would
That
have been,
wasted like 4 or 5 hours.
yeah, you could have easily opened that old project and then just copied the MIDI and pasted it in the other one. So like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I know.
easily could have saved you.
I wish.
Yeah,
Learn the hard way, I
that
guess.
is tough when you are deciding to make major changes for the part of a musician that might not be present at the moment. That is like, sometimes you have to get their blessing. And other
Yes.
times you're just like, all right, well, I'm just going to try this and see what they think. But again,
Yeah.
as long as you can revert it, that's the smart thing.
A lot of the times it'll be really small changes, like on drums, for example, MIDI drums. I'll add a ding at this dead space for the breakdown or something, and they
Sure,
usually enjoy it. But if they don't, I mean, that's one click to get rid of it. It's really nothing.
a ding or simple things. Yeah,
Yeah,
just not to go too tedious. But yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
totally.
knowing I'm just like eating my microphone.
Communication.
Knowing when to chill out and when
Yeah.
to give all your input is important. I feel like I've definitely
Yes.
had projects in the past where I've overreached, and I've had other projects. By that same token, I probably have had projects that I feel like I've overreached, but the artist is probably thankful that I did that because they just didn't have much direction. So,
Yeah.
um, my general take is, if nobody stops you from doing your thing, do your thing. They should let
Totally.
you. They should let you know if they're uncomfortable. I mean, this might sound, sexist, but we're all men, right? And men tend to be pretty direct with one another, whether or not they like something. Um,
Yeah.
we don't tend to get too catty or indirect. If a guy doesn't like somebody, he's like, "Hey, fuck you." Like,
Yep.
this is why men get in way more fights statistically, right? It's because we just let each other know. So
Aggro.
so yeah, if nobody's telling you you're doing anything wrong, then do your thing, have fun.
Roll with it.
Maybe check in every once in a while, be like, "Hey, do you guys like this?" And if they say yes, then cool, you're in the clear.
Yeah.
Um,
I like those projects where you guys are actively bouncing ideas back and forth.
yeah,
And
that's the
like
best.
you really get that spark and you're in the flow state, but they're far and few between, I feel like, where
Hmm.
because a lot of the times I don't really know some of the people that come in. So I still feel like that weird limbo between being very proper but also being very creative,
Yeah,
and the work itself and the recording. But other times I have people come in that I've known for years, and we're just having like the best night of our life, just throwing out ideas. Oh, let me move this here and tune this down and throw it at the end or whatever. It's so cool.
yeah.
Such a good feeling. And I really want that to be kind of like the ultimate thing. That would be like the ultimate thing. That's what would make me like producing a whole lot more for
Hmm.
writing.
Yeah,
But
just
I feel
that's
like it's
just
not always
fun.
oriented that way.
No, I mean, it usually takes. It's a skill to get people comfortable with you quickly. For me, it
Yes, it
usually
is.
takes. I find that it usually takes somewhere in the first hour of us working, sometimes even a little longer, for them to loosen up. You know.
Yeah.
I have not worked with rappers in a while, but I noticed that with a lot of rappers is they would be very guarded coming in. They'd have the tough guy persona, right? Because I
Yep.
guess that's just a part of rap culture is to be tough. And it was so funny because within an hour, it was just all that melted away, and we were just a couple of dudes having a really fun time. So
Yeah. Every time.
yeah, you just gotta
Maybe not
find
every
ways to
time, but
diffuse
a
that.
majority.
You just gotta find ways to diffuse that, whether it's joking or like saying something serious and then following it up with a joke that they won't expect. Like just letting them know, like, hey, we're here to work, but like we're allowed to have fun. This is the whole point of
Yes.
this. Like this is music. This isn't
Yeah.
this isn't going to the office. Fuck that. This is
No.
creative. Um,
Yeah, we're enjoying ourselves here. I feel like that's the best way to get your best ideas out too, is to be comfortable.
absolutely.
Because I feel like sometimes I would suggest things and there would be this weird like push and pull, or just generally not comfortable, the client
Yeah.
or myself. Um, and it might be kind of those things where they maybe don't love the idea or really want it, but they pass it because they don't want to say no because like I'm the guy.
Yeah.
In my eyes, they're the guy. I want your approval for this, so we don't get something that you don't like, and then maybe have to change down the road, like 3 months down the road or
Mm.
whatever.
Yeah. Speaking of changing things, revisions on large
Mm,
projects. Um,
yes.
yeah, that's something interesting. Do you like to show your clients progress mixes, or do you like to wait until the end? How do you feel about that?
I've I like to show them progress mixes,
Okay.
especially if I feel like it's significant. When I get into super technical, well, not even technical, almost redundant, probably, these really small, tasteful things that I would do, I
Hmm.
kind of wait until I can space it out. Like I'll work on it for a week, maybe however long, and then send it to him the next week. But in between there was a bunch of small changes I made.
Hmm.
In the young phases, I'll send them like, hey, do you like these? Do you like this? Do you like this tone or whatever have you? But I feel like I'm kind of pestering them because I used to send them a mix like every 2 days. Like, check this out.
Mm.
Oh, check this out. Check this out. And then I got a comment one time that said, I don't even know what I'm listening to anymore. And they meant it as a joke, but they
Yeah.
said, I don't even know what I'm listening to anymore. Um, So I would like you to not send so many mixes. So that's finally when I stopped
Yeah, that's smart.
and said, I can't do it. Yeah.
I tend not to do progress stuff either. I mean, I'll send them a demo after a tracking day or something, just to show them what they
Yeah.
did. Or I'll send them like, if I edit the drums together and they're about to come in and start tracking them, I'll send them the drums with like a click or something so they can practice. But
Totally.
yeah, I don't like progress updates because I found that when you do that, they start sending you revisions before you're actually even ready to get revisions. You're like, well, hold on, like the stuff you're pointing out hasn't even been touched yet. I'm not even done, I'm not even done with this yet. I haven't even put
Yeah.
my full creative vision into this yet. So I do think it's smart to wait until the end and be like, this is what I think is a finished product. And then they can make revisions. And I find that by waiting that entire time to show them, um, it reduces the amount of revisions they ask for,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. I feel like that's accurate.
Yeah,
They might be asking for things that you're not even at that phase yet.
exactly. Yeah. You worked on a drum and bass mix and they're like, hey, the guitars just sound lifeless. It's like, well, I haven't touched them. And then
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't
all
even
of a sudden they're
started
asking
those.
for, they might ask for, can we try a different guitar tone? But they're thinking of it in the wrong way because it just hasn't been EQ'd yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They might like that guitar tone. They just don't, they wouldn't know because they're not aware of the process and what stage you're at. So I do think it's
Yes.
extremely important to hold off. Even if they badger you, just be like, just wait, a couple more days. Let me finish this up, and
Yep.
then I'll send you something when it's pretty close to being done. I think when it's at like the 90% mark, that's when you can send something and be like, hey, I want to touch up this and this, and like point it out to them. But be like, it's pretty much there. So like, if you guys are hearing anything major that you want changed, like just let me know now. I think that's smart.
Yes. That is
Um,
smart. It saves a lot of time.
and it's also
Definitely.
like you're letting the client. I'm also stealing this from another podcast. This might be a Tony Maserati thing or something where you're basically
Mm.
letting the client take it the last 10%. So you're letting them point you in the right direction to finish it.
That's
Um,
cool.
yeah, so that's one way to think of it. Some clients just want revision after revision after revision.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yes.
yeah, I know you've been dealing with this. And
Yes.
I think it is smart to mention when you start a project that, maybe put a cap on revisions or a soft cap being like, okay, 2 revisions included, the rest of them are paid hourly. And I think that's smart.
Yep.
And it's more of like a deterrent than anything, right? Because it makes them, instead of giving you a small revision, they have to actually think and write down every single note they're thinking of because in their minds, it's like we only have 2. So let's make sure whatever we write to him counts. Um, it's not like I won't do a third revision if it's something small. I don't say
Oh,
that because
totally.
I don't want to give off the vibe that, I'm open to just work for free all the time because I'm really
Yeah.
not. A couple of revisions, sure, why not? But I've had a project before where I ended up doing like 8 revisions and we all just ended up hating the song. Like,
Yeah.
I hated how it sounded, the client hated it, they ended up going elsewhere. I thought the mix was pretty good starting off. And I think I've even said this on the podcast. It was just a case of all the members would get back to me individually. The drummer would say the drums need to be louder. The bassist would say the bass needs to be louder. The guitarist would say the guitars need to be louder. You know what I mean? Like, that's all it
Oh yeah.
was. So I don't like that. I'd rather just consolidate it. Send me notes that you've all checked over and you've all agreed on. Send me those notes and I'll get that done. And timestamp stuff
Yep.
where applicable. And
Yeah. Timestamps are great.
if they can't do that, well, that's really on them. Just be like, hey, organize these for me, please. Make sure everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having organized revision notes is nice because there are times where I'd hear, the guitars need to come up, and then I turn the guitars up, and then another message later they'll say the guitars from 0 to 111, and then 2 minutes and on are too loud. Can you bring those down? Uh,
Mm.
and in my head I'm thinking, well, it was just that one part you wanted up, and sometimes I try and really cater to what might be going on with the client. Like maybe they're at work and they're just like trying to get things out really quick because they have an extremely busy life.
Mhm.
But it's kind of the same thing where I guess it's just redundant after a little bit. And I try
Yeah.
to reinforce that I am here to do that and I want to get it to sound the way they want it because what you brought to my attention too is they might have a different vision.
Yeah,
than I do,
and
and than what
sometimes
I'm thinking in my head.
as much as it sucks, sometimes they're right. Like, so it's
Yep.
smart to like actually pay attention to what they're saying because you might have to decode what they're trying to say. You know, you
Yeah.
might have to try to figure out what they're actually saying when they're saying like I don't like the guitar tone might just mean like, you know, it just sounds muddy and that might just be an EQ thing, right? But
Yeah.
just for example. But you know, they might have a point. You might get a blind spot after you've worked on something for hours and hours, which is fair.
Yeah.
It totally happens.
It's true.
Yeah.
And I have been going about this, I feel like, a certain way, and will have kind of an image in my head from what they've shown me before.
Hmm.
But it's just like all these small changes. I would rather, like you were saying too, wait until a certain point now to send things. And I feel like at this point we are in revision phase, so I feel like I have to keep sending these revisions off, but wait for one big bulk batch of notes to assess, instead of these very small bites. Uh,
Mm.
Mainly just because it doesn't take forever, but it's a lot of exports and it's a lot of going back and forth and trialing
How many
things. And it
revisions?
is
How many revisions are you in on that one project that I was mentioning? You know
on
which
one
one?
right now, one song I'm at 13. That night that
Holy
we were on the
shit!
phone, that was 13.
Holy
And it
shit!
is, it's a blurry line, man.
And he's
One,
he's the client is introducing, you know, new sounds, right? All the way at the end. So it's like it's not even really a revision. He's like redoing parts of it still. And
yes,
then you have to mix those parts in and like at a certain point it's like
even
you
on
need to
existing ones.
yeah, at a certain point it's like you got to start getting paid for that. Either that or
Yeah,
I think the advice I gave to you was just letting the client know that like at this point you're not actually making your song better. You're just changing it. And it's probably going to be
yeah,
worse the more you keep touching it. Like let's just put it out. You know, this is the song. The next song we do will be even better because we're more lined up creatively. We know exactly what each other wants, but like we can't just endlessly toil over one recording. One because nobody ever hears it then, and two
yeah,
because the way you have that project set up, because this is something from like a year ago, right? Like you're just not getting paid
yeah,
anymore, and
yeah,
that's just horrific. I mean, 13 revisions on one song, and it's a whole album you did with
yeah.
them. Jesus,
Yes, 10
nah,
tracks. And
no,
I,
no,
I
no.
got to say that on some of these revisions too, it is that vision and difference there. Because by the end of it, the solution was just one thing. It just
Hmm.
took a few steps to get there. It took a few exports and a couple of phone calls to understand that. Um, but some of it's just very back and forth. And like you get tired of hearing the same music over and over and you're not as excited.
Sure.
And that was what was explained to me too is, I'm not as excited as I was when we first started this. And I was like, man, I feel the same way. It's going to be
Yeah.
cool and it sounds great and it's fun music. And I've yet to talk to him about it with revisions so far because I know he is an incredibly busy person. But
Yeah. I still
um,
forget where I heard this quote from, but the quote that I said to you, which is very important to me, is
what was that?
it was by an author, and I'm just forgetting his name. And the quote was basically like the feeling that you got when you started doing something, like when you started writing a song, let's say, the emotion that it
Yeah.
gave you, and as excited as you got, that's what somebody will feel when they listen to it for the first time. So that's how good your song is. But you're just going to lose sight of that the more you work on it. So just remember that initial feeling is how good that song is, and
Mm,
don't get all don't feel bad when your feelings change on it. Don't think that that makes the
yeah,
material worse. It's not. That song is still just as good as when you wrote it. You have just heard it a
totally.
thousand times
Yeah.
now. Yeah. So I hope that project closes up soon because it is cool music. I think his stuff is good, but I
It's
think you were
fun.
telling me you were dealing with the same stuff where it's like he asks for a guitar up and then the next vision note is like, we made the guitars too loud. And it's like, you're just going back and forth.
Yeah.
You're going in circles. And that's just such a nightmare. And I know you don't like dealing with that. I know that for me, when I did 8 revisions or 7 revisions on a song where it was a lot of that, I was losing my fucking mind. It was an entire week of just like hours each day trying to fix this fucking thing to make it be the way that they wanted. And I wasn't getting
Yeah.
paid and I wasn't having fun. So, and they didn't get a product they liked. So, like, none of us won in that scenario.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. None of us won. I mean, they were like, we're thinking about just buying you out and going and having somebody else mix it. And I was like, you know what? Don't even bother.
Oh,
just don't
Yeah.
bother. Just don't bother paying me the rest. Like I don't feel good taking the rest of your money if you guys don't like it. Like just take that
Yeah.
money, go to somebody else. Wish you guys the best. Um, I think I've even said that before because
That sucks. That's a bummer.
it
No, no.
sucks. It sucks, but I guess that was like the one way to salvage that relationship. Like they don't dislike me because of that, right? Like
Yeah. I worry
so.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're
The
fine. You're a
I
likable guy.
appreciate the I like analyzing, of course, but after a point, like even with my own stuff, I can't overanalyze it. And sending out so many revisions, I hope that that's not something that's like deterring. And it's not really deterring to me. Of course, it's frustrating that the project is taking this long, but um, I hope it's not seen the other way around. Like, well, I paid him X amount of dollars. How come it's taking 13, revisions on this track?
Hmm.
That's something I get caught in my head about.
Well,
Uh,
I don't think that guy
just
feels that way.
nervous about that.
I think the guy that you're working with seems pretty aware that he's the reason it's taking so long because he keeps adding parts.
Yeah, and we're not even done like totally recording yet. We've got more synth
Ah,
and vocals to do too. Hopefully
brutal.
this summer.
Holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
I wish you the best.
It's the longest project I've ever been a part of, but I can still say that it's probably one of the cooler projects I've been a
That's
part of. The
good.
music, the vibe from him, he's a great dude.
That's excellent.
Super cool musician. The only thing is just the revisions. That's the one thing nipping me in the butt right now.
Yeah.
But I like you said, I just started out. That was my first like full album project with
Yeah.
somebody else, like a whole whopping 10 songs.
Hmm.
Um, and it had just gotten into my head that I could do this for a living. So that was the first bite that I got, and I took it.
And
And here we are.
you've done more complex music with less revisions since then, which is the funny
Yes.
thing. But
Yep.
this one project is still biting you in the ass. So hopefully you learned your lesson, you
Yeah.
rascal.
With
Well,
revisions, how do you cap yourself? What's your process there when stating that, or like what brought you to a certain like conclusion on how many you will do? Just the same problems.
yeah, yeah. I dealt with one album where um, this guy just kept asking me to tune his vocals more and more because he was so off that I would like just be meticulously melodyning things by hand for every single song, and I'd have to like
Brutal.
it wasn't like he was like just a little off the pitch. Like he was like sometimes entire notes off, and I'd have to try to make it sound natural, and it was just such a
Oh boy.
fucking nightmare. It took so long, and he would always send notes back, and I just lost all enthusiasm for the project. And after that, I just stopped doing that to myself. Mostly, I mean, I
Yeah.
last year with that mix I was just talking about, I ended up fucking myself over because I just liked the band
Totally.
a lot, and I just wanted to please them. So I make mistakes too. I think everybody does. That first one,
Yeah.
the first Nightmare project was in college. That was like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I was
Oh
doing it.
wow.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. And then I've had a couple since then, right? I mean, it seems like every year or two, probably every 2 years, you'll have like one client that just is like for some reason never satisfied, which is annoying.
Yeah.
But what are you gonna do, man? Try
Is
not
what
to
it
let it get
is.
to me. Yeah, I just try not to let it get to me anymore because like I have
Yeah.
plenty of clients who are satisfied, so they're clearly
Yep.
the outlier. They're the 5% or the 1% or whatever that don't like what I do. So I just think if I look at that, even though it sucks and it hurts when you're not the guy, right? Um,
Yeah. It does.
just try to put it into perspective. Yeah, perspective is everything. And
It is.
if you're making all your other people happy and you're making them very happy, then why are you going to stress about one client that it's not working out with? Maybe you're just not the guy,
Yep.
or maybe they're assholes. Not always. Sometimes they are, but most of the times it's just you're not the right guy, and that's okay.
Yeah. That's all. Yeah. That's totally fine.
Yeah,
And by the end of it, with some of those super long projects too, I just think of the reward of knowing that that's not going to be on the back of my mind.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
done. It's out.
When
People
I
can
have these
enjoy it.
long when I have these long tracking weekends with the album that I'm currently doing, I think I've told you like I keep waking up like in the middle of the night thinking that I have to get up and start working. Just
Oh
like
God,
my mind's so keyed in, and it sucks. I wish I could tone it down, but I'm
that's
just
brutal,
so
dude.
like, all right, time to get to work. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. I'm so stressed about it.
Uh,
So it's good though. It's a good stress. I just wish I could get a full night's sleep when they're about to come over. But
yeah, yeah. At least some sleep.
yeah, it's been getting better. This last weekend wasn't too bad, but the first couple of weekends, especially getting all the drum shit done, that was very it was just a huge undertaking for this. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, you've been going hard lately, especially
I
with
have.
drums. The more
The,
you talk about live drums, the more I realize it's a lot.
oh, it's a lot, yeah. And I wish that I had other people to be able to edit and stuff and track for me, but I don't. So I just do it all, and I have to try to not get burnt out, and I have to try
Totally.
not to lose my perspective on the project, and that's just what it takes to make a name for yourself.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot
do
of
what you
hard
got to do.
work, especially at first. I feel like having
Yeah,
that flexibility
everybody
to
thinks being
take
a
stuff on and
musician. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh, it's all you. Just being flexible. You know,
Everybody
it's
thinks
like
being
a
a
goodness.
musician. I'll cut you off again. I'm such an asshole. Getting
It's
tired.
okay, dude. I said go ahead, and then I kept rambling.
Everybody thinks being a musician is just like, you party, you do drugs, you have fun. It's like, yeah, you can
Yeah,
have plenty of fun doing this, but it is a shitload of hard work if you actually want to make decent money. It is
yeah,
quite difficult. It's
it
cool
is.
because at the end you have a song to show off. Where like at the end of a long shift at a bar, like I used to do, it's like, well, I got $200 in my pocket or $300. Like that's fine. But here it's like, well, I got a couple $100 in my pocket and I have a song that I can show off. Like that's
Yeah,
that's way cooler. But
an actual product that you're like emotionally tied to.
yeah, it can be
That's
brutal.
what I enjoy.
And it's all like I'm proud of where I've come, how far I've gotten so far, even though it's nowhere near where I want to be. It's cool like when people talk to me from a long time there, they're like, "You still doing music?" And I just get to confidently say like, "Yeah, I'm doing studio stuff full time." Like just no
That is a
bullshit, right?
damn good feeling.
It does feel pretty good. I try not to gloat about it, but
Yeah.
it feels good. I didn't go to my 5 year high school reunion because I was like, what's the point? But I might go to my 10 year reunion. Um, that might be a
I
good
don't
like,
even know. That'd be a good place to flaunt that, I feel like, and
yeah,
talk about it.
a little bit, because a lot of those guys are like they just had families, and that's cool. Also, they're tradesmen and they had families and kids. But um, I'm just curious, like, what did everybody get up to? And
Yeah.
I think it would be cool to. This is purely just for myself. Like, I don't need to do it. This is for my ego, just to like see
Yeah.
people's reactions when I'm like, no, this is what I'm doing. Like, but again, that's an ego
Sometimes,
thing. Sometimes it's good to stroke your ego a little bit. It feels nice,
yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. Sometimes you can use that boost. It
especially after
kind
you
of like
put
sparks
in,
some confidence back in.
yeah, after you put in something like a 60-hour week last week, right? Like after
Yeah.
if you're doing the work and you're fucking working hard, a little bit of stroking your ego is cool because
Yep.
you need some form of reward for putting in all that work other than just money.
Absolutely, dude.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I love talking about it, or at least like
yeah.
showing off the music. Like,
Showing off the
check that
music
out.
is a
Like, I
great
got to
one.
help
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Like, hey, look at this. This is a cool song I did. Um,
Yeah.
recently there was a high school friend or acquaintance on Facebook talking about bands she liked. She was like, anybody listen to other bands like this? And I sent her like two of the bands that I produced. I'm like, hey, I even wrote like some of this music for them. Like, I think you'd like it. And it's just cool. Like, I genuinely think it's good music, right? So like,
Yeah.
it's cool just to be able to look at my work and you know throw it up there, and it doesn't just sound like some local band. It sounds pretty good. So
That does
um,
feel good. That's a
yeah,
pretty cool feeling. That distinguishing point there.
feels real good. I think we're gonna wrap this up. I think we've nailed just about everything we want to in this topic, and my voice is also starting to go a little bit again. I'm done
Oh
being
yeah, how
sick.
you feeling?
I'm done being sick, but like I'm still hacking up stuff every once in a while, and yeah, that's all. I'm doing okay though.
Well, good.
Yeah,
Glad you're up, man.
thank you. It's nice to be back, especially because when you do this, when you're sick, you are just losing money, losing lots of money.
Totally.
So it's good to be back,
Yeah,
and
I
I only missed like a week and a half, so not too bad.
not so bad.
Yeah,
Good, man. I'm glad.
not bad at all. So alrighty, everybody. Thanks for joining. And I know I
Yeah.
say this every week, but how about this? This next week, I am free tomorrow. I mean, I'm doing some stuff. I'm doing like drum edits and getting a drum mix going. But why don't I actually reach out to somebody and let's try to get a guest on this next week, and we'll think about the Zoom thing and what we can do to try to make that work.
Very nice.
Maybe we
That would be
split it
fun.
into 2 half hours because I don't know if we want to pay that $15.99 a month for Zoom, but we'll figure it out. I mean, it's a
We'll
write-off.
see.
It's a write-off, right? But like, I don't know. Either way, thank you for joining us, guys. We
Yeah, thank you
appreciate
very
you.
much.
Please tell your friends about us. Please tell your mom and your great grandma and all
Especially
your
great grandma.
gram. I'm sure she would love to hear music industry stuff. But any any new subscribers help. Um, I don't really know
Yes.
what this channel is supposed to be yet. I mean, we've been doing this podcast. It's cool, but who knows? Who knows what type of content will work on here? We probably have to start putting in more effort other than just
Probably. I
doing
think
this.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I've just been busy. I think you've been busy too. But
Yep.
I do see these people on YouTube, and I who are like studio owners, and they're constantly putting out videos, and I wonder like how much studio work are they actually doing to be able to do all of this?
Yeah.
But maybe they just have a much better work ethic than I do, which is entirely possible. I can be lazy
Yeah.
and
I
get
feel the
burned
same
out
way.
sometimes. So who knows? Either way, thank you guys. We appreciate you, and you have a nice day.
Adios. Take it easy.